I placed 6th place in the poetry class at sections. Today I'll be reciting the poem, The Pond by Howard Nemerov. Everything has a past, whether it is nature, people, things, or even ideas. Some say to forget history, because it's irrelevant. But history is very important. History tells us who we are, what the places were like, and how things have been. A common example in history is names. Everyone's name has a unique history, even the names of places. Buildings such as the Washington Monument are memorialized and named after why they were built. George Washington, the first president and the leader of the Continental Army. His namesake was placed on this profound monument for this reason. On the other end, there are the smaller things in life that have historical significance. In this poem, a little boy loved to skate on the local pond. But one day, the ice broke, and he drowned. In memorial, the pond was named after him. This is The Pond by Howard Nemerov. At the long meadow end, where the road runs high on a bank, making a kind of wall, the rains of last October slowly built up this pond, some 100 yards across, and deep, maybe to the height of a man's thigh at the deepest place. It was surprising how slowly the water gained across the land all autumn. No one noticed it until we had a pond where none had been before, to any memory. Most surprising in this country, where we think of contours as fixed on the map and named and permanent, where even if a stream runs dry in the summer, you have the stream bed still to go by, and the chartered name. Red Branch, Henry's Creek, and Anthony's Race, for reassurance, though the reason of those names be sunken with the men who named them so, in the natural past, before history began to be written in a book or a map. Our history, or the settled story on the mouths of crones and poachers, remembering or making up our kinship in the overgrown swamp lands of the mind. And precious little reassurance, if you think of it. But enough about that. Here was, at any rate, surprisingly, this piece of water covering the ground, clear blue and pink, and crisping up to black squalls when the north wind moved across its face. The question whether it would go or stay never came up, and no one gave it a name. Only waterbirds on their way south accepted it and rested there at night, coming at dusk down the meadow on wide wings, and splashing up with beating wings at dawn. By Christmas time, the pond was frozen solid under a foot of snow, level and white across the meadow, so you couldn't say except from memory where the water was and where the land. And maybe no grown-up would have remembered, but the children did, and they brought their skates. And someone's father patched together a plow from plank and 2x4 that half a dozen kids could lean on and clear the snow across the glittering ice. They skated all the darkening afternoons until the sun burnt level on the ice, and built their fires along the shore to warm their hands and feet. They skated nights, under the full moon or the dark. The ice mirrored the moon's light or the fire's glow. There was a tragedy, if that's what one calls it. The newspaper called it that. Pond claims first victim. It still had no name, as though a monster underneath the ice had been waiting to capture the little boy. Oh, skating in the darkness, all alone, away from the firelights. The others heard his cry, but he was gone before they found the place. Or else, as though a tribe of savages, we sanctified our sports with sacrifice. At any rate, the skating didn't stop, despite the funeral and motherly gloom and editorials. What happened was the pond took the boy's name, of Christopher, and this was voted properly in meeting and would be so in the next map. When the next map was drawn, Christopher pawned. If the pond should still be there. The winter set its teeth, near Eastertide, before the pond was free of ice all night. And by that time, the birds were coming back leisurely, staying a day or so before they rose and vanished in the northward sky. Their lonely cries across the open water played on the cold, sweet virginal of spring chaste. Beginning, too, carried along with the wind out east. Killdeer and plover came and were gone. Grackle, starling, and flicker settled to stay. And the sparrowhawk would stand in the height of noon, a stillness on beating wings. While close over the water, swallows would trace a music nearly visible in the air, snapping at newborn flies. Slowly, the pond warms into life. Cocoon and bud and egg, all winter's seed and shroud, unfolded being the pond named for Christopher, who drowned. By day the birds, and then the frogs at night, kept up a music there, part requiem, part hunting song. Among the growing reeds, the water boatman worked his oar. The strider walked between air and water. Dragonfly climbed to be born and dazzled on clear wings. In sullen August, under the massy heat of the sun, towering on the height, I sat at the pond's edge. The indeterminate soft border of what no longer was a pond, but a swamp, a marsh with here and there a stretch of open water, even that half spread with lily pads and the rich flesh of lilies. And elsewhere, life was choking on itself as though, in spite of all the feeding there, death could not keep up the pace, and had to let life curb itself. Pondweed, pickerelweed, and bladderwort, eelgrass and delicate sundew and milfoil, peopled thick the cities themselves. And dragonfly and damselfly by hundreds darted among the clustering leaves. Striders by hundreds skated among the stalks of pitcher plant and catkin. Breathless the air under the intense quiet whining of all things striving to breathe. The gift of life, turning its inward heat upon itself. So, Christopher, I thought this is the end of dedication, and of the small death we sought to make a name and sacrifice. The long year had turned away, and the pond is drying up, while its remaining life grasps at its own throat. The proud lilies wilt, the milfoil withers, and the catkins crack and fall. The dragonfly glitters over it all. All that your body and your given name could do in accidental consecrations against nature returns to nature now. And so, Christopher, goodbye. But with these thoughts there came a dragonfly and settled down on a stem before my eyes, and made me think how in nature too there is a history, and that this winged animal of light, before it could delight the eye, had been in a small way a dragon of the deep, a killer and meat-eater on the floor beneath the April surface of the pond, and that it rose and cast its way in May, as though putting away a costume and mask in the bitter play, and taking a lighter part. And thinking so, I saw with a new eye, how nothing given us to keep is lost till we are lost, and immortality is ours until we have no use for it, and live anonymous in nature's name, though named in human memory and art. Not consolation, Christopher, though rain fill up the pond again, and keep your name bright as the glittering water in spring. Not consolation, but our acquiescence. And I made this song for a memorial of yourself, boy and the dragonfly together.